Hi guys, Dr. Tina here, coming at you from Core Wellness Clinic in Portland, Oregon. I'm making this video today because I have been asked this question frequently enough that I figured it was time to address it. Anyone who knows me knows that I am a diehard for deadlifts. I love deadlifting. It probably is my favorite exercise, hands down. I do it as often as my body will permit, and there's a lot of health benefits to it. You can learn more about those health benefits on many of the podcasts and interviews that I've done that are all on my website at drtyna.com, D-R-T-Y-N-A. But today what I want to teach you is the basics. I will preface this by saying this is probably the most powerful exercise that you can do to keep your low back healthy. It is also the most dangerous exercise that you can do if not done correctly. So it's very important, and the way that I answer most all of you online and my friends and colleagues who always ask me if I can teach them is that you really need a good strength and conditioning coach, and it's going to take you several weeks working with that person one-on-one before you can safely start deadlifting some weight. So I'm going to show you the basics of the movement pattern today, and we're going to use a very light kettlebell, a 20-pound kettlebell, but I want you to understand that this is just a starting point, and we're going to get the movement pattern down correctly. Once that's handled, you can start loading up a barbell. But please don't go to the barbell right away. It's dangerous, you can hurt yourself. High chance of herniating a lumbar disc, and we don't want that. We don't want anyone to hurt themselves. So as a physician, I'm telling you, don't go to the barbell yet. Don't start putting plates on the barbell and think that you can deadlift. Get a good strength and conditioning coach and do it under their guidance. It took my strength and conditioning coach 12 weeks before he told me, good job. So make sure that you get this handled correctly and you don't hurt yourself. I'm going to show you the basics. So rule number one, I didn't come up with it, Gray Cook did. If you can't touch your toes, you can't deadlift. So if you can't safely lean down and touch your toes, you can't deadlift. I'm a little bit tight. I worked out this morning pretty heavy, and so I'm feeling it. But my hands are nicely locked on the ground. I can grab my toes. I'm fine. Okay. So if you got to work into that, if you need to stretch out first and get warmed up, I would highly encourage that. The second thing I'm going to teach you is the basic hip hinge pattern, and the best way to accomplish this is with a plastic PVC pipe or dowel. So it's very lightweight. What I'm interested in is 3 points of contact: my sacrum, my mid back, and the base or the back of my skull. Okay, you want to maintain that contact all the way through. The goal with this movement is we're going to hip hinge back and dip down, and it's just like those little toys that you see where you put it on the edge of a glass of water, those little birds, and they dip down and come back up. Okay, that's the movement pattern we're going after. So sacrum, mid spine, thoracic spine, base of skull. I've got a ponytail, so it's impeding my movement a little. What you want to do is, let me switch hands so you can hear me. What you want to do is reach your derriere back. Pretend there's a wall right about here. Derriere goes back towards the wall. Hips bend, knees bend in progression. Spine stays in complete neutrality and stays up against this dowel. Back and dip, come back up. This movement is basically using the human body, which is a lever and pulley system. That's it. If you can understand this concept, you can deadlift. I'm trying to harness the kinetic energy and the leverage from my Achilles all the way up to the base of my skull. I'm trying to tension that whole posterior chain out, and I'm going to use that tension to snap myself back up upright. And basically we're doing that movement whilst picking up something heavy off the ground. That's it. That's a deadlift. So there's nothing more complicated to it than that. Dip down and back, bring it up. Hips back towards the wall, back, 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 back. Bring it up. Notice my tibia is staying fairly upright. This is not a squat. This is not a bend forward. This is a hip hinge, butt back against the wall. Back, back, back. Tibia stays upright, full tension on my posterior chain, come back up. So that takes a while, and I played with the dowel or the PVC pipe for weeks before I was allowed to pick up any weight. So I want to encourage you to do that as well. The second thing is, once we don't have the dowel anymore, what I want you to keep in mind is your spinal alignment. We want to keep the spine stacked over the pelvis, and we want to keep it in neutral. So we have a nice lumbar lordotic curve. We have a kyphotic curve in our thoracic spine, and we have a cervical, again, lordotic curve. And so we want to keep that alignment whilst keeping our core tight. We want to keep that same alignment as we go back and come up. Our head is not arching down or flexing forward. We are not tucking the pelvis or hyperextending, and we're not curving the spine out. We're keeping this movement going down and back. Our hips are driving back towards the wall. There's a slight bend in the knee. Okay? That is the movement pattern. So we're going to try that with a kettlebell. And it's very simple. Feet are about hip width plus a few steps out, I like. You can do sumo deadlifts. You can do more narrow stance. I like this stance with my feet slightly turned out. It's how my hips work. It's how I don't feel pain in my low back. And find what works for you. Again, work with somebody who can help coach you on this. So, spine is stacked. Transverse abdominis is locked in. Core is tight. And I'm going to drive my rear end back. There's going to be a slight bend at my knees. The goal is to completely tension out that posterior chain. I'm going to run my hands down the front of my thighs. Back, 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 back. Now a slight bend in the knee. I'm here. I'm at my starting point. The reason I have this elevated is because we ideally want what we're picking up to be about mid-shin and not too much lower, because then you really do start to get into a funny little tuck and curve of the spine. And so I'm going to show you that again. Butt back, slight bend in the knee. I'm here. I feel complete tension on my posterior chain right now, all right? So another way to get into that is to simply lean down and hold the kettlebell, flatten out the spine, and tension it back. It's a little harder to figure out if you don't know what you're trying to feel. I can straighten out my legs while I'm down here, start to straighten out my spine, and fully tension back. There, I've got full tension, and the kettlebell's coming right up off the step. So that's the goal. The goal is you get so much tension, you're going to use that tension to bring yourself upright and unwind the hinges. We're just hinging and hinging, and we're getting the levers and pulleys tight, and then we're bringing ourselves back up. Two things to think about once you're down there. Really work on getting the tension through that posterior chain, really feeling your hamstrings and your glutes and your posterior column or chain really tension out. And then step number 2 is, and my friend Brandon taught me this, you take the handle and you pretend like you're bending it. And what that does is it basically helps you engage your lats, because it's very important to keep your upper back strong while you're doing this. I made the mistake of not having a very strong upper back at the time and deadlifting too much, and I really hurt. I pulled out one of my ribs pretty significantly, tore the tissues. It was extremely painful. So you want to have a strong and locked upper back. When you bend that bar or you bend the handle of the kettlebell, you're going to engage the lats. You're going to bring imagine your scapula, your 2 shoulder blade bones coming down and in. And in Pilates we talk about pretend they're wings, and you're putting the tips of the wings in your back pocket of your jeans. So here's my scapula, they're coming down and back, okay? That's step number 2, and that's easily accomplished by just bending the bar, and you'll see me do it in a second. Step 3 is getting your glutes to really turn on optimally, and this is just, Brandon helped me with this, and it was an epiphany for me. Your feet are driving down and out. You want to imagine that 3rd step, and I'll show it to you, is you're going to push down and out into the ground, and all of a sudden you'll see my glutes fire up. So, step 1, posterior chain is locked and loaded. Another way to get there is back, 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 back. My abs are in, down, 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 down. Full tension on the posterior chain. Step number 2, I'm going to bend the handle of this kettlebell or the barbell. Don't go to the barbell yet though. Bend. Notice my lats turn on and my back just fired up and locked. And then step number 3, I'm going to push my feet out. And there goes my glutes. That's my glutes off. That's my glutes on. All right? And literally this kettlebell just came up off the step. And now you just stand up. So we'll show that to you again. Lock the posterior chain out, lock your lats on, push out, up. And it's important to follow through. A lot of people get to here and stop. You want to really squeeze your rear end and squeeze those glutes up so that you get the full action of the movement. You don't want to hyperextend like this. I see that. That's a bad move for your low back. So We're gonna tension out the posterior chain. We're going to engage the lats, push out on the feet. The kettlebell just came up. I'm gonna stand up. And then you're going to return back exactly the way you came up. That's a little harder for people. The trajectory of this kettlebell should be straight up and down. As I'm returning down, I'm again just pushing back, 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 back. Slight bend at the knees. So we'll show you. Down, up, down, up. Little birdie dipping its beak in the water. Down, up. And that's it. That's a deadlift. I want you to start with a kettlebell. I think it's very safe to do, although I've seen extremely fit people try to do this with a 40-pound kettlebell and blow out their discs because their form was horrible. So form is everything. Start with the hip hinge movement with the dowel, butt to the wall, get that down pat, go to a kettlebell, make sure it's elevated correctly. Remember, block out the posterior chain, engage the lats by bending the handle of the kettlebell, push your feet out to get your glutes to fire up, and that's your deadlift. That's the basic pattern. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you get to deadlifting, and I hope if you decide to go heavier than this or go to the barbell, that you hire somebody who is a great strength and conditioning coach and can walk you through this safely. So I'm Dr. Tyna, thank you so much.